The ancient Hawaiians invented lava sledding. Although it did not involve molten lava, the sleds could zip down the mountains at up to 50 miles an hour. Intriguingly, lava sledding was both a sport and a religious activity. Hawaii remains one of the most famous places today. Millions of tourists travel to this archipelago yearly to experience its beauty. Many of the islands making up Hawaii are volcanic. Although there are over 137, 8 main islands continue to draw people. Many of us think of Hawaii as a modern tourist attraction. However, ancient Hawaii holds an entirely different mystery and appeal. Hawaii had a rich history long before the arrival of Western colonists, starting with the arrival of the Polynesians. They built a vibrant culture, and when you visit Hawaii today, you can still see reminders of their great civilization. Ancient Hawaii was filled with intrigue and mystery. It's time we explored it and gained a better appreciation for their triumphs and social progress, which live on in the native Hawaiians who still call the islands home. How did the Polynesians first reach Hawaii? Hawaii is a group of islands formed by volcanoes. Experts believe the islands began developing between 40 and 70 million years ago. Many volcanoes in the area are still active today, so new islands are slowly rising from the ocean, even though they'll take thousands of years to break the surface. The active volcanoes on land continue adding to the islands, increasing their size yearly. The lava not only contributes to the black sand beaches, but also creates fertile land that supports the rainforests and wetlands to give Hawaii its natural biodiversity. However, Hawaii was most likely uninhabited by people for millions of years. Historians believe people did not arrive in the archipelago until about 400 CE. Those brave explorers were the Polynesians. There is some disagreement among native Hawaiians today. They say another group lived on the islands before the Polynesians arrived. In Hawaiian mythology, they are the Menehune, who were dwarfs. Even though these people are part of Hawaiian culture, historians believe the Polynesians were the first to settle in Hawaii. People typically discuss the Polynesians as one group, but they comprised many different people groups. They all shared similar cultural and genetic roots, even sharing similar languages and religions. The Polynesians were also renowned for their tattoo art. Tattoos were far more than decoration. They indicated someone's social status, achievements, or ancestors. Although each tribe had a different method and symbolism in their tattoo art, there were enough similarities for visiting Polynesians to find a new tribe's influential leaders quickly based on their tattoos. The Polynesians came from Southeast Asia, slowly crossing into the Pacific. For example, the Austronesians left Taiwan as early as 3000 BCE. Their explorations did not bring them to Polynesia until about 900 BCE. Polynesia is a collection of islands in the southern Pacific. Today, Hawaii is considered the northern corner of the Polynesian Triangle. It was remote, so the Polynesians did not discover it for hundreds of years. Finding the archipelago might have taken them a while, but the Polynesians were incredible navigators. They used the stars, winds, and currents to travel the Pacific Ocean, sometimes even sailing for fun. Their canoes used paddles and sails. They usually loaded the boats with food and livestock for their long voyages. People also tended to travel in small groups, using 3 or 4 ships to help each other successfully find land again. Most of their trips centered around trade or exploration of new lands. The tribes often fought with each other, and the conflicts could send people fleeing for a new island. Overpopulation also forced various tribes to split up, and some tribespeople went across the waters searching for a new place to call home. In this way, the Polynesians slowly spread across Polynesia, eventually ending up on the Marquesas Islands. Unlike most of Polynesia, the Marquesas Islands were not fertile and lacked freshwater sources. The Polynesians could make a living, but historians think they kept their settlement on the islands as a home base to launch other explorations for better farmlands. Historians tend to date the Polynesians' arrival in Hawaii around 400 CE. There is some disagreement because of the lack of written documents. The Polynesians at this time did not write down dates or stories, and their culture was oral, so we don't have dates for the surviving stories today. The Polynesians first arrived in Kalae, the southernmost point of the Big Island of Hawaii. They were also the first to give Hawaii its name, which comes from Hawaiiki, meaning homeland. They had brought plants, seeds, and livestock with them in anticipation of making the archipelagos their new home. As expected, the first few years were challenging. However, the Polynesians were resilient and excellent farmers. Over the next 600 years, the Polynesians spread out and claimed the island for themselves. Their progression changed around 1000 CE when the Tahitian people arrived, joining the Polynesians living on the islands. The two groups mixed, forming the basis for ancient Hawaiian civilization. What was life like in ancient Hawaii? Historians usually date ancient Hawaii from 1000 CE to 1778 CE. The people had a unique culture and were removed from the rest of the world during this time. By the time Western influences arrived in 1778, historians believe between 200,000 and 1 million people lived in Hawaii. In some ways, ancient Hawaii was similar to other Polynesian cultures. Each tribe had a ruling family or class that made the tribal decisions. They also intermarried to keep their bloodlines pure, and male chiefs had multiple wives. However, there were some differences. While land was probably a concern for people across Polynesia, land ownership was critical to ancient Hawaii, serving as a means of wealth and establishing boundaries. These land divisions were called moku, and they stretched from the top of the mountains to the shoreline, allowing for possible smaller sections within the moku. Each area was self-sufficient and sustainable. The communities in the mountain regions grew food in the nutrient-dense soil caused by the volcanic eruptions. The communities on the shore fished and kept livestock. They traded with each other, so everyone had access to the necessary resources. In Hawaii, each island had a king, and each moku had a chief who ruled over lesser chiefs and enforced the king's tribute. The lesser chiefs helped care for the people, ensuring everyone had the needed land and resources. Hawaii's social structure had several classes. Skilled professionals like doctors, dancers, and craftspeople were higher on the ladder. Below them were the commoners, who were farmers, fishermen, and laborers. The lowest social class was the enslaved people and prisoners of war. Although parts of ancient Hawaii may seem idyllic, the people were not strangers to warfare, fighting over land and honor. For the ancient Hawaiians, mana was incredibly important. It signified a person's spiritual power and was a determining factor in one's social status. Insulting someone's mana could lead to war. Especially early in ancient Hawaii's history, food was abundant. One of the most popular crops was taro, which they used for food and medicine. It was a sacred plant, and only men were allowed to cook it. The ancient Hawaiians set up special irrigation fields for growing taro, relying on the abundance of moisture, but they also grew crops like bananas, sugarcane, and sweet potatoes. Along the coast, the people fished. Women and children helped with the fishing from the land, using nets, spears, baskets, and even their hands to catch fish and other marine animals. The men also engaged in canoe fishing, sailing out to the deep sea and relying on traditional knowledge to bring in a catch. Most fish were eaten fresh, but some were salted and dried on the beach. This abundance created a stable environment, giving people space to create. They created games and sporting events, including lava sledding and an early form of surfing. They also enjoyed music, playing string instruments, nose flutes, and drums. Storytelling was critical to Hawaiian culture. Stories usually focused on the religious or mythical history. The ancient Hawaiians also created art, carving statues and drawing on cave walls. However, the ancient Hawaiians did not have metal tools. Although the rest of the world had long since discovered it, metal was not one of Hawaii's resources. This did not stop their inventiveness or curtail their art, even if their tools were made from non-metal materials like bones, shells, and rocks. Their skills are most evident in their cloth making and boat construction. Cloth was made from bark, usually from the paper mulberry tree. It was cleaned and beaten until it was soft enough to manipulate. Then, the ancient Hawaiis dyed the material to make complex artistic patterns. Boat carving followed similar creative lines. The vessels were a necessary part of life, but the Hawaiians chose the right tree carefully, using prayers and dream interpretation to aid them. While it may seem strange to use prayer to choose a tree for boat construction today, the ancient Hawaiis took their religion seriously. They believed prayers were important for everyday life and built temples across the islands. Some were more traditional buildings, but others were open-air spaces. The ancient Hawaiians traveled to particular places to pray for their needs. The people were polytheistic. They had several major gods and hundreds of minor gods who spanned Hawaiian culture, including plants, places, tools, and even occupations. Historians believe many ancient traditions, like athletic contests and feasts, were connected to the Hawaiian religion. Still, it also eventually led to more destruction as people waged war, spurred on by their spirituality. Near the end of ancient Hawaii's history, wars were becoming increasingly frequent, leaving them vulnerable to the waves of colonization that finally reached their shores in 1778. How did ancient Hawaii change after the Europeans arrived? Despite its intrigue and mystery, ancient Hawaii was not a utopia. It was run by people, meaning there were power struggles and political tensions. Not every conflict could be decided in court, although the Hawaiians did use them to settle disagreements. The various mokus fought with each other. Some of these fights even extended to other islands in the archipelago. This was the world Captain James Cook discovered in 1778. Cook is famous for exploring Polynesia, charting New Zealand, and crossing the Antarctic Circle. In 1776, Cook set out again in search of the Northwest Passage, an area connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. But at the time, the Europeans didn't know where it was. Instead of finding the Northwest Passage, Captain James Cook stumbled upon Hawaii on January 18, 1778, becoming the first recorded European in the archipelago. At first, the Hawaiians were welcoming. Cook and his crew left to explore the North American coast and returned in 1779, laying anchor in Kealakekua Bay, a sacred site dedicated to the god Lono during an annual festival dedicated to the same god. Although historians still debate if ancient Hawaiians saw James Cook as one of Lono's incarnations, his arrival would still have held religious significance. The ancient Hawaiians aimed to treat the Europeans honorably, providing excellent housing, food, and other luxuries. In return, Cook's men traded a little with them, giving them iron nails, which the Hawaiians would not have had access to. However, the Europeans stayed for about a month, straining Hawaiian hospitality. After one of Cook's men died unexpectedly, he tried to leave. Sadly, one of his ships was damaged at sea, forcing the Europeans to return. At this point, the native Hawaiian people no longer wanted these strangers in their lands. They threw rocks at the Europeans upon their arrival, and tensions rose. After a group stole a mast from his ship, Captain Cook met with the island's king to negotiate a deal, which did not go well. One of the lower chiefs was shot in the struggle, and a mob of native Hawaiians attacked the Europeans, forcing Cook's men to fight their way out. James Cook was one of the men who died that day. His men used muskets and cannons to push the Hawaiians away from the ship, giving them the few days they needed for repairs. They finally set off to tell the world about the mysterious archipelago in the Pacific Ocean. Other explorers soon arrived, intent on bringing the islands under colonial power. It took years of turmoil and struggle to colonize Hawaii. Even though ancient Hawaii is now past, part of its intrigue lives on in the native Hawaiians still on the island. They remind us repeatedly that their ancestors were brave, creative, and deeply spiritual, building a nation filled with the same adventurous spirit that first led the Polynesians to explore the waters around them in search of mysteries waiting to be revealed. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about ancient Hawaii, check out our book, Ancient Hawaii, a captivating guide to Hawaiian human history, starting from the Polynesian arrival through the growth of a civilization to Kamehameha the Great. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.